So the story you told us last month, December, I guess it was, about your upbringing and how you learned to be a compassionate person. That's a personal story, but it touched me deeply. Is it something that you'd be willing to share?
Okay, this is the history of my father in civil rights.
Yes.
Is that, yeah. Well, it's, I'm best known around Congress and around the area as being that science guy, because I'm the only PhD scientist in Congress. But, I'm also the son of a civil rights lawyer.
I know your story, and I just think that anybody that hears your story realizes that there are people in Congress who really do care, and we have to put that care into dollars and cents and policies that will help those who are in need of help.
The question that you asked me was the question that everyone has to answer of what fraction of your life you spend in service to your fellow man. Because this is a fundamental question that everybody has to answer. And for most people, the answer is somewhere between 0% and 100%. But it's a really important question. And it's a question that I learned a lot from my father from. My father, I'm best known around Congress and around the area as being the only PhD scientist in Congress, but I'm also the son of a civil rights lawyer. My dad was also a scientist who left science to become a civil rights lawyer. And Dad ended up writing a lot of the enforcement language behind the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And he had, he, as I say, was a real scientist. He started during World War II. He designed fire control computers for the Navy. And then most of the way through the war started getting these reports of how many people
How is my experience, it says.
how many people had been killed by his team each week. And he became very unhappy at using his scientific skills to basically to hurt people. And so he'd grown up in the South and saw a lot of things he did not like about how blacks were treated there. And so he saw civil rights as the moral challenge of his generation. So he left his career in science and became a civil rights lawyer. And Dad spent the whole decade, but there was the famous Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court decision that said you should no longer have segregated schools in the South and throughout the United States, but school districts were not complying with that. And so Dad spent a lot of the 10 years after Brown versus Board of Education in 1954 and the Civil Rights Act of 1964. He spent that traveling around the South, trying to help federal judges who were struggling with the issue, school boards, county executives. And so as a result of that 10 years of work, he became sort of an expert. And when the Civil Rights Act finally passed, Congress provided money for school districts, but only on the condition that they adopt a racially non-discriminatory school system. And that's a very complicated issue. And Dad was called upon to write the enforcement language behind the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And so it was the discussion, when your parents pass away, everyone spends, a couple weeks of their lives going through their papers and belongings and trying to understand, what should be done with that. And I was reading the papers that he exchanged with his parents as he was thinking about leaving science and becoming a civil rights lawyer. And so as a result, he came to discussing the same question that I started with, that is simply what fraction of your life you spend in service to your fellow man and how to do it. And so I have great admiration for everyone who works on the ground, helping homeless people and others in need. But there's also a need for people working in the Capitol building behind you to really to make sure that the money and the resources are delivered to the organizations that do that work on the ground. And that's one of the things that makes me feel most useful about my job at Washington. So I just want to thank you again for staying in Congress's face. And what a beautiful set of blankets. You know, I am going to be coming in to the DC presentation by President Zelensky, and if I can, I will try to stop by to see that beautiful array of quilts.
I'll tell
And
you,
the effort
it is
that went
a
into that
stunning
is so important.
It's a stunning display, and I'd love to see you here tonight. So I'll be looking for you. Thank you so much for giving us your story and a perspective on Congress that we need to keep in mind.
Well, thank you all.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.